Hey, it's LaShonda Henry here, creator of the Unblock Your Blessings 90-Day Challenge, created to help you build your best business, life, and self. First and foremost, I want to say it's been a pleasure and a complete honor sharing my Unblock Your Blessings with you thus far. We are nearing the final step, just about over, but again, I really have to say how appreciative I am for you taking this journey with me and finding value in what I do to such a degree that you will take my lessons, my sentiments, and my recommendations to heart. So I wanted to say that first and foremost. And of course, as always, I hope at some point you've interacted with me via email, video, chat, something, so that I know that you're there, that you're working through it, and we're doing this together. So as always, we have a choice, some chat, and of course, a challenge. So let's jump right in and start with the choice. But last step was about choosing now versus never. Today I want to talk about how you choose now versus later. So there are some things that we say just absolutely are never going to happen. And that's one thing I want you to figure out how to unblock and work through that process. And then there are other things that we say, well, maybe it'll happen, but it ain't happening right now for one reason, shape, or form. It's just not happening. And like I say, you never want to be in a position where you let your circumstances define your success. So one of the steps was you've got to will and work versus whine and wait. That's one thing. This is a situation where you've got to choose now versus later. Okay? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some things that I believe have really affected me as far as how I make things happen for myself now versus later. One of the things that I envisioned when I created Sister Sense was, eventually, because I'm a smart cookie, right? In air quotes, I'm a smart cookie. Eventually people are going to notice me and I'm going to get interviews and I'm going to be featured and maybe one day I'll get on the cover of a magazine. Secret little things that you think about when you want some sort of recognition for the things that you do. But you know what? Because I've always believed in the quote, just do it, I said to myself, I'm going to choose now versus never. Now versus later. I'm not going to wait for somebody to finally recognize me and say, not only do we want to interview you, we want to put you on the cover. I said, I'm going to put myself on the cover. So I always figure out a way to make things happen for myself. When I felt like I was a single and I wanted a circle, I created the BBWO network and I said, well, how can I do this? So I started creating a BB forum. That was the first thing I did. And then they created MySpace. And I said, well, I'm going to create a group on MySpace. MySpace was like the beginning of social networking. Pre-Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest, it was MySpace. Pre-MySpace, it was news groups and forums. And, these PHBB chat forums that we would go on and one person would type and then a few hours later somebody else would type. It was not real time in any way, shape, or form. But I did those because I knew that I wanted to have a community. I figured out how to make a community from MySpace and then Ning was created and then I turned my MySpace group into a Ning community. Same thing with the magazine. I said, okay, well, would I get this done? I knew about self-publishing and then at the time, the Lord, as I say, you got to work it and will it. I willed it and such. I found out about MagCloud and how I can go about creating my own magazine. And I said, okay, I'm going to create my magazine and I'm going to be on the cover. And so said, so done. I love that quote. So said, so done. It's kind of like the extension of just do it. I said it and I made it happen. Choose now versus later. Do what you want to have done and want to see accomplished in your life versus waiting for someone or something to magically happen for you to bring those ideas and dreams to pass. So I'm not much of a reader nowadays, especially as a very busy work at home entrepreneur and a mom. In both facets, there's always something for me to do. And so when I can literally sit down and just be quiet and not have all the voices in my head talking back at me, it's a beautiful thing. But while I don't read as much as I used to, one of the books that I've enjoyed over the last couple of years is the 40-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Now, of course, I read it when all the sensation and hype was done, but of course, I always tell you that, as I mentioned in a previous step, I'm not a consumer. I don't know what's going on 99% of the time because I'm always creating, and that's okay because that's a part of being different, which is one of those key fundamentals when you want to be successful and eccentric and all that great stuff, right? You got to be the 1% and not the 99%. So, one of the things that I love about the 40-hour work week, I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong because I'm a hard worker and I work 80 hours. I'm like 40 hours, but no, that's not the title. The title is the 4-hour work week. One of the things that I loved and what most people will love, the first thing they see when they see the book is the title. That's why it became a New York Times bestseller. 4-hour work week? What the hell is that about? How do you accomplish that? Now, what's funny is you'll get the book and you'll engorge it and you'll love it just as I do, but he really doesn't talk about creating a 4-hour work. I don't know why I keep saying 40. He doesn't really talk about the fundamentals of creating a 4-hour work week so much as he talks about what it takes to live your best life now versus waiting for a perfect time in the future to have that happen for yourself. Now, here's a particular quote that I personally love and I would like to share with you before I talk a little bit more about the 4-hour work week. This is so true. People wait all week for Friday, all year for summer, all life for happiness. Now, if you know it, say, girl. People wait all week, I hate this job, I'm tired, I can't wait till Saturday, and I get to sleep on Sunday. They wait all week for Friday, and then it's like, oh God, I'm planning and I'm saving so the summer I can have this great dream trip, and this is what's going to be for me, and they wait all life for happiness. Eventually I can stop all the craziness that I'm doing and I can retire. Now, in his book, Tim Ferriss talks about what we would consider the traditional thought process as far as what it means to be successful. You go through your elementary school, then your high school, then your college, then you get a good job and you start a family, and then you get a 401k, and then you keep working, and then your kids grow up and you keep working, and then you retire, and then you go out and take those vacations. And it's kind of that line, right? And remember I told you want to choose the curves over the lines? Same thing with your life, not just your business, but your life. So he talks about, you get to this point where you're old and you're retired and now you want to have fun. I remember this one other quote that I particularly love where basically it says something to the effect of, when you're young, you are basically spending all your time and energy trying to live a life and be established like an older person. And then when you're older, you're spending all your time and money to regain your youth. And it's absolutely true. Because you get to that point where you're older, but your body's not the same, your mind is not the same, your energy level's not the same, and now you want to take that trip around the world that you should have took when you were 24. I always believe in age-appropriate experiences, and so while I did work quite a bit when I was in high school and college, when I got to college, I said, you know what, I'm going to do the freshman fun thing, and yes, I'm going to get decent grades, but I'm going to do those things that are appropriate for an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old, and I'm going to make mistakes, and while to some degree, I will always regret the breakup of myself and my high school sweetheart. We met in elementary school. I don't really, because I needed to go through those experiences, and there are a lot of horrible guys, to date out there. But if I hadn't broken up with him, I wouldn't have met the love of my life now, my father of my son, and I wouldn't have gone through all of those life lessons and experiences. So I always say, choose the rock versus the pillow. Our relationship was such a wonderful, comforting experiences, but I knew that there were challenges and things that I wanted to experience. But like I say, I digress a bit. It's about age-appropriate experiences, right? And it's just about living life, period, now versus later. So when Tim Ferriss, and you'll read the book, as I'm sure, and if you really want to instant read it now, you'll download it onto your smartphone or mobile device, because that's essentially what I did. I read it that way, and then I bought the book because I had to have the physical copy and the digital copy. He talks about the fact that why wait until you're retired to go on that perfect trip? You don't realize one thing that he said that's really interesting. You don't realize that there are a lot of islands and Caribbean countries and, all these exotic, far off places that we think the rich people go when it's so much money that you could probably go and enjoy for little to nothing because of, the exchange rate and, how much it costs to be in that particular country. There are things that you could do for little to nothing, and you don't even realize it because you've kind of blocked yourself off into, I've got to get this done first, then this done, then this done. And so I'm going to wait till I can relax and I can enjoy that later. For example, my mother recently went on a cruise, and it was a Caribbean cruise. She had the pleasure of going to Jamaica. She went to Mexico. She went to Haiti. And I believe she said she spent under $500 on the trip. And she said, she had an opportunity to go on the trip, and she was like, okay, so we need to go next year. Christopher would love it. Jay would love it. Everybody would love it. We absolutely need to go next year. And she just was raving about it. It was a 7-day cruise, all these different Caribbean countries and the exotic food and the trip and the tour. Something that is less than $500 that you could probably save up for in a couple of months. And there are people who have yet to take a vacation in their life because they're still waiting for later to come. But what happens if, God forbid, later never comes? I think about my situation as a work-at-home mom, and I always choose now versus later. Even when I started out, and I think at the time I was making, my first month working for myself, I made $500. But I said, you know what? I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I'm going to save and grip and whatever I need to do so that every Christmas my son goes to Florida to see my family and my mom, because I absolutely love my mom and I want her to have a relationship with him. Just like when I was younger, she made it a point to always take me to Florida to see my extended family because she wanted me to build a relationship with them. I chose now versus later. I'm not going to wait until it's the right time. I'm going to make the time to choose now versus later. So that's the challenge that I put out for you today. I want you to think about those things that you say you're going to hold off for a couple of months or even a couple of years because it's not the right time, there's not enough money. Read his book. Find out what it is to be old rich versus new rich. And new rich meaning how you can creatively and innovatively live the life that you want to live now, wherever you are now, versus waiting for later. There's another quote, and of course, I've got a lot of keeper quotes that you can put on your Be Blessed vision board or just kind of write down and take to heart. There are some people in life, as the quote says, that it's not about having the best of everything, it's about making the best of everything. And I think about when I lived in my little apartment and we just moved to North Carolina, one of my favorite experiences. Yes, I talked about the horror of that one moment when I was walking in the rain and going home and I was crying and in tears and I was like, I have to get a car. I have to live a different life and move forward. But I actually secretly loved that moment where we would come from getting groceries, pack out the groceries. My little son, he'd be running around the apartment. Then we would sit down and we would watch something. And, it's funny because he goes, whenever anybody comes over, he's like, you're going to have a great time because we always eat together and watch TV together. That's our thing. That's our family time. So one of the issues of Sister Sense, and every issue, I have a mom to mompreneur feature. One of them, I talk about creating your own traditions. And for us, that's one of our traditions. So for me, that stems from one of my favorite times being in that house is when we would come home, pack up the groceries, and sit down and watch television together. It wasn't the biggest thing, but it was the best thing. Because for me, it meant a lot of things. It meant I made enough money to buy food. Keeping it real. It meant that, we were still had a roof over our head. We were taken care of. We were provided for. God always found a way to make sure that even as an entrepreneur, even if the business was slow or whether it was good, whatever, we were taken care of. But I just loved that moment that we would all snuggle up on my little couch and be in front of our small television. Now I don't even know how many inches the big screen is in the entertainment room. But when we moved, we were watching a 19-inch and just kind of huddle together and get warmth from each other and laugh and giggle. And whether it was watching cartoons because my son was small, or, him going to sleep and me watching something that was fun for me and my hubby, whatever it was, we were doing it together. And I enjoyed that. That was me enjoying my family now versus later. I think about those moments in particular because I do a lot online, and sometimes it feels like I'm never offline, but I always got offline because I needed to prioritize those moments where I was mommy and I was wifey and not Sister Sense work at home. I needed to shut down. I shut down. I turn off computers. I turn off laptops and smartphones and all that stuff, because sometimes now means enjoying my son when he's 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 versus when I go, oh my God, you're going to your prom. What happened? Because I was so knee deep in my business, I didn't see you grow up. I don't want that to happen. So with respect to him, whether it be my family or my vacations or just living life, doing things that I don't want to put off. If you want to skydive today, hell, skydive. I watched a video once of Kim Coles, and absolutely wonderful woman, and we've spoken a few times. I watched one of her videos when she talks about her gifts and her skydiving and doing some crazy things. You've got to live now and choose now versus later, okay? So that is essentially your challenge today. Think about those things that you've been putting off and prioritize something that you feel like you can get done. If not within the next 90 days, at least figure out how you can prioritize it to get it done this year, please. And so that is your challenge for today. I will talk to you more. Take care.